Alright, if you were to ask me to name a series that was incredibly influential back in its day but is now relegated to less than second-rate status, I would put Alone in the Dark pretty high up on that list. This series that revolutionized horror is now largely forgotten. Anyway, let's talk about Alone in the Dark 2.
Why Alone in the Dark 2? One-Eyed Jack's Revenge? Well, I don't own the first game, and this one was gifted to me some time ago, so I thought, hey, why not? People always mention the first game because that's the only one people give a shit about, so let's talk about its first sequel. Now, how well this game actually did back in the day, I have no idea. Clearly it did well enough to get a follow-up in 1995, but in the current day, anything that isn't the original pretty much gets brushed aside due to a certain other horror series taking the limelight. That is of course Resident Evil. That's no surprise to anyone. While Alone in the Dark was a step towards showing gamers what the future of horror could really look like, Resident Evil was able to improve on that and ultimately took the focus away from what inspired it. For anyone new here, I am a big Resident Evil fan. Any of the 10 people who watch my videos regularly will know from just how much of the early stuff I've covered, whereas Alone in the Dark I've treated more as a mild curiosity.
Now, the number of games that I've actually played is pretty limited. I covered the fourth game a while back, which was fine, and I even got the latest reboot on release, which copped a fair bit of shit, but I thought it was perfectly okay. But really, that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah, you start to notice a pattern with these games. While the series has been somehow surviving for the last few decades, we've never been able to get a game that is better than just alright. I mean, they've tried to reboot the series like 3 times now, with each game running into the same problem. They're just not good enough. Sure, the new Nightmare isn't bad, just like the newest game isn't bad. Really, it's only the 2008 game that was truly terrible. I remember renting that one back in the day with high hopes because while 12-year-old me only knew about Alone in the Dark by name, surely if I knew what that was then it would be, you know, pretty good, yeah? Well, like many of my rental experiences in my youth, I was of course let down and taught the important life lesson that life is not fair and you will die alone.
The years following, I grew into a bigger and bigger fan of the Resident Evil series, even watching most of those really crappy movies from back in the day, but I was always curious about the series that inspired the gameplay of those early titles. Then I was gifted this. This could be fun. Surely it's just a slightly jankier version of that original gameplay. A far jankier version of that original gameplay. Ah, fuck.
Yeah, an important thing to note here, while this game was originally released on PC in 1993, the console releases may have come a little bit later than you would expect, which would be yet another problem for the series. The first console port was for the 3DO in 1995, which is a bad start considering even less people bought that than the Saturn. But speaking of the Saturn, it, along with the PlayStation, wouldn't see this game until 1996, 3 years after the game's initial release. You know what people were doing in 1996? They were uncovering the horrors in the Spencer Mansion on their PlayStation, not playing 3-year-old PC games that look like fucking Alone in the Dark 2, One-Eyed Jack's Revenge. This is a pretty good spot to start actually. Let's talk about this game's presentation. Continuing the approach of the original game, we're of course rolling with 3D models over 2D pre-rendered backgrounds, a staple of many 90s games that helped developers get around many hardware limitations of the era. In 1993, this would probably be looked at a little bit more fondly by people picking it up on PC for the first time, but I'm gonna be honest, a lot of this looks comically bad for when this port was released. It's well known that developing for the Saturn could be a nightmare, but yeah, when teams knew what they were doing, we got some absolutely mind-blowing experiences. Seriously, a month after this game was released in Japan, they got Panzer Dragoon 2, one of the best looking Saturn games. I could just sit here and talk about how fucking cool that game is and how incredible the visuals are, but no, instead I decided to talk about this fucking game that is barely playable, but I'll get to that side of things, don't worry. The point is, tech was moving fast throughout the 90s, and each year saw more impressive games than the last, so unless the team behind this port rebuilt the game's visuals and gameplay, this was always going to be a dated experience. With that said, I don't hate everything going on here. Yes, the character models leave a lot to be desired, but the little models in the inventory menu are quite charming, so I won't put any hate on those. Also, while the 2D backgrounds are pretty crunchy, I actually think a lot of them look pretty good from a stylistic side of things. I especially liked the little animations here and there that liven up the environments. There's a solid effort made here to make the areas look run down and spooky, and some of the camera angles you get hit with here are genuinely really cool. You can absolutely see how this would have inspired what followed it. You're hardly going to get any scares from a game like this for a number of reasons these days, but we'd be nowhere without these early games building the foundation of horror in the medium. Good luck following the plot all that well though. We're running old school here where things are fucking vague and you'll spend a fair bit of your time confused as to what exactly is going on. Here's the basics though. We return as Edward Carnby and embark on a super sleuthing quest to rescue a kidnapped child. Now, One-Eye Jack, a ringleader of the Wretched, commands his legion of smugglers, gangsters, and pirates to thwart Carnby's every move. Mazes, trapdoors, and secret passageways loom in the shadows as the mystery deepens.
Nerves of steel and quick thinking are the only solution to keep the terrifying depths of disaster at bay. Oh, sorry. I didn't catch any of this playing the actual game.
Now, there is an intro video that sets things up a little bit, with it being Christmas time, 1924, at a mansion called Hell's Kitchen in California, but I almost completely missed this as it doesn't automatically play when you either boot up the game or start a new playthrough. I just happened to leave it on the menu before I got stuck into playing the game and got slapped with this cutscene that shows Carnby's partner showing up to the mansion, sneaking in and finding this little girl before really weird shit happens with this bloody thing. There's no dialogue here at all explaining anything. You only get that occasionally when you find some books lying around. And when I found this guy at some point in the game, I had no idea who he was, because I didn't see that intro video until sometime later, so of course I just pushed him off the ledge. Without that first cutscene, with next to no context, we just show up 2 days later after something, blow this gate up, and just fuck shit up. Well, we tried to. I didn't exactly get off to a great start here. Point is, we're here to kill some baddies, who turn out to basically be pirates from hundreds of years ago. This Jack fella is the big baddie. At least that's what I assume, since the game mentions a bloke named Jack.
Yeah, I didn't finish this game, and I'm not even going to pretend like I got super far, and I'm going to get straight into why.
Alright, I've been teasing it enough. This game is terrible. Really quite laughably so. I didn't hate everything going on here, but this game is a level of shit that literally makes it borderline unplayable, even for a guy like me who has covered his fair share of old games. Yeah, I know what a few people will be thinking. This game is from the early 90s, it's not fair to be judging it so harshly. Well, the simple fact is, this game has aged very, very poorly. I'll always try to look for things that still work in older games, because often I'll be covering some pretty groundbreaking experiences, but the execution here is so poor that I find it difficult to give much praise. If I was to give at least one redeemable quality, it's that this is going up there with Siberia, which I covered briefly in a different video you should totally go check out, as a game so laughably bad that it provides enough entertainment with its shitness. That'll at least be for a few hours if you're lucky, because eventually the sheer terribleness will wear you down and you'll be left wondering about your life choices. I mean, Siberia, I was just about brought to tears with how funny it was, and here we got close to those highs. It would be pretty bloody obvious as to why this game is so terrible with all the capture footage I've shown so far, but I'll get stuck into a few reasons why this is up there as one of the most difficult gaming experiences I've ever had. Before that though, I'll sprinkle in a slight backhand compliment with one aspect that was shit, but not as shit as I was expecting. So tank controls, I know we all love them, how could you not? Well, one thing that surprised me was how perfectly okay they worked. In fact, the best part of this game is that the run button is mapped to the bumpers, and you can just hold that down and steer perfectly fine. Good job Alone in the Dark too, it's a shame everything else about your game is filled with fucking bizarre decisions. Like, why is the pause menu mapped to the C button? You know how many times I kept hitting this, interrupting gameplay and just getting pissed off? All the time. I was doing it all the time. They could have just made it the start button, but no, that just pauses the game, even though the menu screen does the exact same thing. Why even have a separate pause button in the first place? It's okay though, they made sure to have buttons mapped out to adjust the volume. Yes, you heard that right, to adjust the volume. That makes up for everything, I guess all is forgiven now. With all that said, at least one positive is that the frame rate is a solid 60 FPS throughout, with no drops whatsoever. No, the performance in this game is laughable. It is insulting how poorly this game runs. This is such a poorly optimized port for hardware that while complicated was very capable of some very impressive things. It's mind-blowing just how shit this game runs with so little to pull off. I hate to have to bring it up again, but the port of Resident Evil is pretty damn good. It looks good, runs well, then we've got this crusty PC game that is struggling for no reason. How do they manage it? Well, there's a few possible reasons really. Could be lack of time to port it over, lack of experience with the hardware, general laziness, who knows? Point is, this is not a good look, and massively affects playability with an already clunky game. Not even a solid frame rate was going to save how weirdly designed the gameplay is with this one though, especially combat, which is such a chore. You can do melee, but guns are far more effective. Just be ready to have trouble hitting things at times because there's no auto-aim. Navigating the menu is alright once you get used to it, because you'll need to be in there to reload and stuff, but getting into a fight, even sometimes with just one enemy, can spell game over. Not because they're too spongy or anything, you'll just risk getting stun-locked, often with no way of escaping. This is where the frustration really sets in the most, but at least one graceful addition is being able to save anywhere, and trust me, you'll need it. When you do die though, you'll get this hilarious death screen where old mate over here just takes you to this cliff and chucks you off. Got a chuckle out of me the first 10 times, the next 75 kinda wore me down though. The point is, you will be dying a lot in this game. It's not fair, the combat has no redeemable qualities, and this would have been better as, I don't know, a turn-based game or something. At least doing stuff like looking for key items to progress works fine, surely that's hard to drop the ball on, but it's at the service of nothing. At the end of the day, if I wanted to play some Christmas time jank, I'll stick with Blue Stinger on the Dreamcast.
Look, I know I've been harsh here, it's all in a bit of fun, but this game is incredibly outdated, especially for the hardware that it's on. I could recommend it for a little bit of so bad it's good fun, but if you can't handle the jankiness, stay well away from this one. Anyway, that's all from me today. I'll catch you next time.